The champagne tasted like expensive disappointment, which seemed fitting for the evening. I watched my wife Talia from across the ballroom, noting how she laughed just a little too loudly at something Porter Kellor had whispered in her ear. Her hand lingered on his arm longer than professional courtesy required. "Miles Harren, right?" A woman's voice interrupted my surveillance. I turned to find Cambria Torwell, Porter's wife, holding 2 glasses of wine. She was elegant in that way money could buy, but her eyes held an intelligence that couldn't be purchased. "You look like you need something stronger than champagne." "That obvious?" I accepted the wine gratefully. My name tag read, Miles Harren, IT security consultant, which usually made people's eyes glaze over at these corporate events. But Cambria seemed genuinely interested. "Your wife works for my husband," she said, watching Talia with the same calculating expression I'd been wearing moments before. "She's quite animated tonight." Talia had chosen a red dress that cost more than my monthly salary. She'd claimed it was necessary for networking, but the way she kept adjusting the neckline suggested she was networking for more than business contacts. Porter stood close enough to her that a business card couldn't fit between them. "She's passionate about her career," I replied, tasting the bitterness in my own words. Cambria's smile was sharp as a blade. "Passion. Yes, that's one word for it." The ballroom buzzed with the usual corporate theater. Executives patted each other on the back while their assistants scurried around with clipboards. The company had rented the entire top floor of the Meridian Hotel, complete with crystal chandeliers and a view of the harbor that probably cost more per hour than most people made in a week. I'd been to these events before, always as Talia's reluctant +1. She'd introduced me to her colleagues with the enthusiasm of someone showing off a moderately interesting houseplant. Tonight felt different, though. Tonight she hadn't introduced me to anyone at all. "Miles?" Talia's voice cut through the ambient chatter. She approached with Porter in tow, her smile stretched tight across her face. "There you are. I've been looking everywhere for you." That was a lie. I'd been standing in the same spot for 20 minutes, and she'd walked past me twice without acknowledgement. "Porter, this is my husband, Miles. Miles, this is Porter Kellor, my boss." Her introduction carried all the warmth of a weather report. Porter extended his hand with the confidence of a man who'd never questioned his place in the world. He was everything I wasn't. Tall where I was average, commanding where I was quiet, expensive where I was practical. "Miles, great to finally meet you. Talia talks about you all the time." Another lie, delivered with practiced ease. "Funny, she never mentions you," I replied, watching Porter's smile falter slightly. Talia's grip tightened on her wine glass. "Miles works in IT security. Very technical stuff." The dismissal was clear. Technical stuff. Code for boring, irrelevant, beneath notice. I'd heard variations of this introduction dozens of times, but tonight it hit differently. "Actually, I specialize in digital forensics and cybersecurity," I corrected, looking directly at Porter. "I help companies identify security breaches, track unauthorized access, recover compromised data, that sort of thing." Porter's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "In my line of work, you learn to read micro-expressions, the tiny tells that revealed when someone had something to hide." "How fascinating," Cambria interjected smoothly. "I imagine you see all sorts of interesting things in that line of work." "You'd be surprised what people think they can hide in the digital age," I agreed. "Everything leaves a trace if you know where to look." Talia laughed nervously. "Miles loves his computer mysteries. Porter, didn't you want to show me those quarterly reports?" "Of course." Porter placed his hand on the small of Talia's back, a gesture that was simultaneously possessive and intimate. "If you'll excuse us." They walked away together, leaving me with Cambria and a growing certainty that my marriage was more fractured than I'd wanted to admit. "Interesting conversation," Cambria observed. "Illuminating," I agreed, pulling out my phone. Talia had left her purse at our table, and her phone was sticking out of the side pocket. She'd always been careless with her devices, relying on me to handle all the technical aspects of their lives. While Cambria engaged a passing waiter in conversation about the wine selection, I casually retrieved Talia's phone. Her password was our anniversary date. She'd never been creative with security. The irony wasn't lost on me. Her text messages told a story that made my stomach clench. Weeks of exchanges with Porter, each more intimate than the last. Photos that definitely weren't appropriate for a professional relationship. Plans for weekend getaways that coincided with her supposed business trips. I forwarded the most damaging messages to a few key contacts in her phone. Aubrey from HR, Janice from accounting, and several colleagues whose names I recognized from her work stories. Then I deleted the sent messages from her phone and slipped it back into her purse. "Everything all right?" Cambria asked, returning with fresh drinks. Perfect, I said, watching Talia across the room. She was laughing at something Porter had said, completely unaware that her carefully constructed world was about to develop some serious cracks. The evening continued its predictable course. Speeches were made about quarterly profits and market expansion. Awards were presented to employees who'd exceeded expectations. Through it all, I watched the subtle drama unfolding as people began checking their phones. Aubrey was the first to react, her face going pale as she read something on her screen. She immediately looked around the room until her eyes found Talia, then Porter. Her expression shifted from shock to something that might have been anger. Janice was next, her eyebrows climbing toward her hairline as she scrolled through what I assumed were the forwarded messages. She leaned over to whisper something to her companion, who immediately pulled out his own phone. "Looks like the evening just got more interesting," Cambria murmured, following my gaze. "Corporate events usually are, once you get past the surface," I replied. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. By the time dessert was served, the whispers had spread throughout the room like ripples in a pond. Talia remained oblivious, still basking in Porter's attention, but I could see the change in how people looked at her. Some with disapproval, others with the hungry interest of people who'd just been handed premium gossip. Porter noticed first. His executive instincts were finely tuned to shifts in corporate atmosphere. I watched him scan the room, noting the clusters of people huddled over phones, the pointed looks in their direction. His hand dropped from Talia's shoulder. "Excuse me," he said abruptly, pulling out his own phone. Talia looked confused as he walked away, leaving her standing alone near the dessert table. For the first time all evening, she sought me out, her eyes scanning the crowd until they found mine. I raised my wine glass in a small salute and smiled. Not the warm smile of a loving husband, but something colder, something that promised consequences. She started walking toward me, her expression shifting from confusion to concern as she passed groups of colleagues who stopped talking when she approached. By the time she reached me, her face had gone pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. "Miles, I think something's wrong. People are acting strange." "Are they?" I asked mildly. "How strange?" "They keep looking at me and whispering, and Porter just rushed off without explanation." Her voice carried a note of panic that she was trying to suppress. "Maybe you should check your phone," I suggested. Sometimes these corporate events generate interesting social media buzz. She fumbled for her purse, her hands shaking slightly as she pulled out her phone. I watched her face as she scrolled through her messages, seeing the exact moment when she realized what had happened. "Miles," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the ambient noise of the party. "We need to leave, now." "Why the rush?" I asked, finishing my wine. "The evening's just getting started." But Talia was already moving toward the exit, her composure cracking with each step. Porter intercepted her near the door, his face flushed with anger or embarrassment or both. They had a brief, heated conversation that ended with Talia pushing past him and disappearing into the elevator. I took my time following, stopping to say goodbye to Cambria. "Thank you for a memorable evening," I told her. "Something tells me this is just the beginning," she replied, her smile knowing. "I have a feeling we'll be seeing more of each other, Miles." The ride home was silent, except for the sound of Talia frantically typing on her phone, probably trying to do damage control. But in cybersecurity, I'd learned that once information was out there, containment was nearly impossible. "How could you do this to me?" she finally asked as we pulled into our driveway. "Do what?" I asked innocently. "You know what you did. Those messages, those photos, you sent them to everyone." "I think you're confused," I said, getting out of the car. "I don't have access to your phone. You're always so careful about your privacy." She followed me into the house, her heels clicking angrily on the hardwood floor. "This will ruin everything. My career, my reputation." "Your reputation?" I interrupted, turning to face her. "What about our marriage? What about the promises you made?" "That's different," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you made your choice. You just didn't expect there to be consequences." She stared at me as if seeing me clearly for the first time. The quiet, accommodating husband who fixed her computer problems and attended her work events without complaint had been replaced by someone she didn't recognize. "This isn't over," she said finally. "No," I agreed, heading upstairs to our bedroom. "It's not." I woke up alone, which wasn't unusual lately. Talia had taken to sleeping in the guest room, claiming my snoring kept her awake. The real reason was probably that guilt made poor company, but I'd stopped caring about her sleeping arrangements weeks ago. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Cambria. Coffee? I think we have things to discuss." 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Porter's wife in a small cafe downtown, far from the corporate district where we might be recognized. She looked different in daylight, less polished, more human, but no less intelligent. "I assume last night wasn't spontaneous," she said, stirring sugar into her coffee. "What makes you think I had anything to do with it?" "Because I know my husband and I know your wife. They're not nearly as clever as they think they are." She leaned back in her chair, studying me. "The question is, what do you plan to do next?" "Why do you care?" "Because Porter has been stealing from the company to fund his lifestyle, including his affair with your wife." She said it matter-of-factly, as if discussing the weather. Hotel rooms, expensive dinners, jewelry, all charged to various business accounts. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "You have proof?" "I have suspicions and access to financial records. You have technical skills and motivation." She slid a business card across the table. "Think about it." Back home, I found Talia pacing in the kitchen, still in her robe despite it being nearly noon. Her phone was pressed to her ear, her voice sharp with desperation. "Aubrey, please, just listen to me. Those messages were taken out of context." She noticed me and lowered her voice. "Can we meet for lunch? I can explain everything." I poured myself coffee and waited. The conversation didn't seem to be going well based on Talia's increasingly frantic tone. "Fine," she said finally, ending the call. She turned to me with eyes that were red-rimmed and angry. "Are you happy now?" "About what?" "Aubrey won't even talk to me. Janice hung up when I called. And Porter—" She trailed off, wrapping her robe tighter around herself. "What about Porter?" "He says we need to be more discreet, that the company is asking questions." Her voice cracked slightly. "He thinks maybe we should take a break." I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "That's rough." "You did this," she accused. "You ruined everything." "I didn't make you have an affair, Talia. I didn't make you lie to me for months. I didn't make you humiliate me at company events." I set down my coffee cup harder than necessary. "You did all of that yourself." "It wasn't supposed to happen this way," she said quietly. "How was it supposed to happen? Were you going to ask for a divorce or just keep sneaking around indefinitely?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. I spent the rest of the morning in my home office, ostensibly working on client projects, but actually digging deeper into Porter's digital footprint. Cambria had been right about the financial irregularities. Credit card statements, expense reports, hotel bookings, all painting a picture of a man using company resources for personal gain. But I found something else, something that made my hands clench into fists. Travel receipts for trips that coincided exactly with Talia's supposed girls' weekends and professional conferences. He'd been funding their affair with stolen money, and she'd been lying to me about where she was going. My phone rang. Rafe Connolly's name appeared on the screen, my oldest friend and the owner of an auto repair shop on the rough side of town. "Miles, buddy, you sound like you need a drink," he said without preamble. "It's barely noon." "So? I heard through the grapevine that your wife's been making headlines. Thought you might want to talk." An hour later, I was sitting in Rafe's cluttered office behind the garage, nursing a bottle of beer and filling him in on the situation. Rafe was the kind of friend who'd help you move a body without asking questions, though fortunately our friendship had never required that level of loyalty. "So what's the plan?" he asked when I finished. "I'm not sure there is one. I just wanted her to face some consequences. Brother, if you're going to play this game, you better play to win." He leaned forward, his expression serious. "Half measures just make you look weak." "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that Porter drives a very nice BMW that would look much less nice with sugar in the gas tank." I stared at him. "That's destruction of property." "That's justice. Besides, who's going to prove anything? Guy's got enemies now thanks to your little stunt last night." The idea was tempting, but I shook my head. "I'm not looking to commit crimes here." "Fair enough. But Miles, don't let them walk all over you. You're smarter than both of them combined. Use that." On the drive home, I thought about what Rafe had said. He was right about one thing. I was smarter than Porter and Talia. I'd built a career on understanding systems, finding weaknesses, exploiting vulnerabilities. Why should my personal life be any different? I stopped at the bank first, closing our joint savings account and moving the money to an account in my name only. Then I called the credit card companies and reported Talia's cards as potentially compromised, requesting they be frozen pending security verification. By the time I got home, Talia was dressed and clearly preparing to go out. "Where are you headed?" I asked. "To fix the mess you made," she snapped. "I'm meeting with HR to explain the situation." "Good luck with that." She paused at the door. "Miles, I know you're hurt, but this vindictive behavior isn't like you." Maybe you don't know me as well as you thought." After she left, I called Cambria. "I've been thinking about your offer," I said when she answered. "And?" "I'm interested. But I want to do this right. Legally." "Of course. Can you meet me tonight? I have some documents you should see." That evening, I drove to an upscale restaurant in the financial district. Cambria was waiting in a corner booth, a manila folder on the table beside her wine glass. "These are photocopies," she said, sliding the folder across to me. "Bank statements, expense reports, travel receipts, all showing a pattern of unauthorized charges." I flipped through the documents, my anger building with each page. "This goes back months. Nearly a year, actually. I think your wife's affair was more serious than either of us realized." The evidence was damning. Porter had charged thousands of dollars in personal expenses to various company accounts, always in amounts small enough to avoid immediate attention. Hotel rooms in romantic destinations, expensive restaurants, jewelry purchases, all funded by corporate money. "Why haven't you turned this in already?" I asked. "Because I wanted to be sure, and because I wanted to make sure Porter faced consequences beyond just losing his job." Her smile was cold. "I want him destroyed, Miles. Professionally, socially, completely." "What about Talia?" "Your wife was a willing participant. She knew where the money was coming from." I thought about all the expensive gifts Talia had received over the past year. The jewelry she claimed was from work bonuses, the designer clothes she said were necessary for client meetings. I'd been proud of her success, happy that her career was flourishing enough to afford such luxuries. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Access to Porter's computer, email records, financial files, anything that shows the full scope of his embezzlement." "That's illegal." "Is it? If you were to discover evidence of fraud in the course of your work as a cybersecurity consultant, wouldn't you have an obligation to report it?" She had a point, but it was a thin one. I'd need legitimate access. "What if the company hired you to conduct a security audit?" I stared at her. "You could arrange that?" "I have friends on the board of directors, friends who are very concerned about corporate security in light of recent revelations about employee behavior." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. I would be hired as an external consultant to assess the company's cybersecurity protocols. In the course of that assessment, I would naturally have access to employee computers and email systems. If I happened to discover evidence of financial impropriety, well, that would just be doing my job. "When can you set this up?" I asked. "Give me 48 hours. I drove home feeling more energized than I had in months. For the first time since discovering Talia's affair, I felt like I was taking control of the situation instead of just reacting to it. Talia was waiting for me in the living room, her face flushed with anger. "What did you do to my credit cards?" she demanded. I reported them as potentially compromised. Standard security protocol when there's been unauthorized access to personal accounts. "Unauthorized access? You mean when you went through my phone?" "I mean when someone started using our joint financial resources to fund activities I wasn't aware of." She stared at me, and I could see her trying to process what I knew and how I knew it. "Miles, we need to talk. Really talk." "I'm listening." "This thing with Porter, it's not what you think." "What is it then?" She sat down heavily on the couch. "It's complicated. Adultery usually is. Don't be cruel." "I'm not being cruel, Talia. I'm being accurate." I remained standing, looking down at her. "You had an affair. You lied to me repeatedly. You used our money to fund romantic getaways with another man. Those aren't complicated. They're facts. I never meant for it to go this far." "How far did you mean for it to go?" She didn't answer, which told me everything I needed to know. "I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight," I said, heading for the stairs. "Miles, wait." I turned back to her. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am sorry." "So am I," I replied. "Sorry I wasted so many years thinking you were someone worth trusting." The words hit her like a physical blow, but I felt no satisfaction in her pain, just a cold determination to see this through to its logical conclusion. The call from Cambria came Tuesday morning while I was reviewing security protocols for a client in the pharmaceutical industry. "It's done," she said without preamble. "The board approved the security audit. You start Thursday." That was fast. I told you I had friends. They're very concerned about protecting company assets, especially in light of recent security breaches. I almost smiled at her phrasing. The leak of Talia's messages could certainly be classified as a security breach, though not the kind the board was probably imagining. What's my cover story? Routine cybersecurity assessment with focus on employee access protocols and financial system security. Very thorough, very comprehensive. You'll have access to everything. After ending the call, I sat back in my chair and considered what I was about to do. In 48 hours, I would walk into Porter's company as a legitimate consultant with authorized access to their entire digital infrastructure. It was almost too perfect. My phone buzzed with a text from Talia. "Can we have dinner tonight? Just us. We need to figure this out." I stared at the message for a long moment before responding. "I'll be home at 7. She was cooking when I arrived, which was unusual. Talia's culinary skills were limited, and she typically preferred takeout or restaurants. The smell of burning garlic suggested this evening wasn't going to change that pattern. "I made pasta," she said, not turning around from the stove. "Your favorite." It wasn't my favorite, but I didn't correct her. We'd been married for 6 years, and she still didn't know my food preferences. That seemed symbolic somehow. "Smells great," I lied, loosening my tie. Dinner was awkward, filled with stilted conversation about work and weather. Talia kept glancing at me nervously, clearly working up to something. I waited, eating the overcooked pasta and watching her gather courage. "I've been thinking about what you said," she finally began. "About trust and lies and everything. And you're right. I made terrible choices. I hurt you, and I hurt our marriage." She set down her fork and looked directly at me. "But I want to fix this, Miles. I want to fix us." "How?" "I ended it with Porter. Completely. No more contact outside of work, and even that will be minimal." She reached across the table as if to take my hand, then seemed to think better of it. "I know I have to earn your trust back, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes." I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. She seemed sincere, but then again, she'd seemed sincere for months while carrying on her affair. "What about your job?" I asked. "What about it?" "Working with Porter every day, pretending nothing happened. Won't that be difficult?" "I can handle it. My career is important, but not more important than our marriage." Another lie, though she might not have realized it herself. Talia's career had always come first, even before the affair. I'd accepted that for years, telling myself that supporting her ambitions was what a good husband did. "I appreciate the sentiment," I said carefully. "But I think we're past the point where words are going to fix anything." "Then what? What do you want from me?" "I want honesty, complete honesty. About everything?" She nodded eagerly. "Ask me anything." "How long has it been going on?" "About 8 months." "Where did you go when you told me you were at conferences?" Her face flushed. "Hotels. Sometimes his apartment when his wife was out of town." "Did you love him?" She hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. I thought I did, but I realized now it was just excitement, the thrill of something new. "Do you love me?" Another hesitation, longer this time. "Yes, I want to. I want us to work." I nodded, filing away her careful phrasing. "Thank you for being honest. So where does that leave us?" "I don't know yet," I admitted. "I need time to process all of this." "How much time?" "I'll let you know." The rest of the evening passed quietly. Talia seemed to think we'd made progress, that her confession had somehow reset our relationship. I didn't disabuse her of that notion, let her think reconciliation was possible while I prepared for Thursday's audit. Wednesday evening, I met Rafe at his shop after hours. The garage was closed, but he was still there, tinkering with an engine that looked like it belonged in a museum. "You sure about this plan of yours?" he asked without looking up from his work. "It's not illegal. I'm being paid to find security vulnerabilities. And if you happen to find evidence that your wife's boyfriend is a thief, then I'll report it to the appropriate authorities." "Uh-huh." He wiped his hands on a greasy rag and turned to face me. "Miles, I've known you since college. You're not the revenge type. Maybe I'm evolving? Or maybe you're about to do something stupid that'll blow up in your face." I considered his words. Rafe had always been the voice of caution in our friendship, the one who talked me out of bad decisions and risky ventures. But this felt different. "What would you do?" I asked. "If someone betrayed you the way Talia betrayed me?" "I'd probably punch them in the face and move on with my life. That's not really an option here." "Why not? Divorce the cheating wife, find someone who appreciates you, and let karma handle the rest." "Because karma's too slow," I said, "and too unreliable." He studied my face in the harsh fluorescent light of the garage. "All right then. But if this goes sideways, don't say I didn't warn you." Thursday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood as I drove to Porter's office building. I'd been there before for company events, but never as anything other than Talia's husband. Today I was Miles Harren, cybersecurity consultant with authorized access to their entire digital infrastructure. The receptionist directed me to the IT department, where I met with Janet Morrison, the chief information officer. She was a tired-looking woman in her 50s who seemed genuinely concerned about the company's security posture. "We've never had a comprehensive security audit," she admitted, as she led me to a temporary office. "The board finally approved the budget after some recent incidents." "What kind of incidents?" "Employee data breaches, personal information being leaked, that sort of thing." I nodded sympathetically while privately noting that Talia's text messages hardly constituted a major data breach. "I'll need administrative access to your network," I said. "Email systems, file servers, financial databases, everything." "Of course. I've prepared temporary credentials for you." Within an hour, I was logged into their system with full administrative privileges. It was like being given the keys to a digital kingdom, and I intended to explore every corner. Porter's email account was a treasure trove of incriminating evidence. Not just the personal messages with Talia, but business correspondence that showed a pattern of questionable decisions and ethical lapses. He'd been padding expense accounts, approving payments to vendors that didn't exist, and generally treating the company treasury as his personal piggy bank. But the most damaging evidence was in his financial records: spreadsheets detailing expenses that had been improperly categorized, receipts that had been altered, bank statements showing transfers to personal accounts. It was a masterclass in corporate theft, and he documented every step. I copied everything to an encrypted drive, making sure to maintain proper chain of custody for potential legal proceedings. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice. My phone buzzed with a text from Talia. "How's your day going?" I replied. "Productive, very productive." Around lunchtime, I took a break and called Cambria. "How's the audit proceeding?" she asked. "Better than expected. Your husband is either incredibly arrogant or incredibly stupid." "Both, I think." "What did you find?" "Enough to put him in prison for embezzlement, and enough to implicate anyone who knowingly benefited from his theft." There was silence on the other end of the line. "Cambria, you still there?" "I'm here. I'm just processing. How implicated is Talia?" "Very. She knew where the money was coming from. Some of the hotel receipts have her signature on them." "I see. Are you having second thoughts?" "No," she said firmly. "I'm having thoughts about timing. When do you plan to turn over the evidence?" "Tomorrow. I want to make sure I have everything documented properly." "Good. That gives me time to prepare." "Prepare for what?" "For the aftermath. This is going to destroy both of them, Miles. Are you ready for that?" I thought about Talia's attempted reconciliation the night before, her claims about wanting to fix our marriage. She'd been lying even then, probably planning to continue the affair once the immediate crisis passed. "Yes," I said. "I'm ready." The rest of Thursday passed in a blur of data collection and documentation. By 5 o'clock, I had enough evidence to end Porter's career and probably send him to prison. I also had enough to destroy Talia's professional reputation and potentially make her an accessory to embezzlement charges. As I packed up my equipment, Janet Morrison stopped by my temporary office. "Find anything interesting?" she asked. "I'll have a full report for you tomorrow," I said. "But yes, there are some security vulnerabilities that need immediate attention." "Serious ones?" "Very serious. The kind that could cost the company millions if left unchecked." She nodded grimly. "I'll alert the board." On the drive home, I called Rafe. "It's done," I said when he answered. "You get what you needed?" "More than I needed. Enough to bury both of them." "And you're sure this is what you want?" I thought about the question as I sat in traffic, watching the windshield wipers struggle against the persistent drizzle. Was this what I wanted, or was it just what felt necessary? "I'm sure," I said finally. "All right then. Just remember, once you pull this trigger, there's no taking it back." "I know." But as I hung up and continued the drive home, I wondered if I really understood what I was about to unleash. Revenge was a powerful force, but it was also unpredictable, and sometimes it consumed the person seeking it just as thoroughly as its intended targets. Talia was waiting for me when I got home, a bottle of wine open on the kitchen counter and what looked like takeout from an expensive restaurant laid out on the dining room table. "I thought we should celebrate," she said, smiling brightly. "Celebrate what?" "Us, our fresh start. I know things have been difficult, but I really think we can work through this." I looked at her, really looked at her, and tried to reconcile this woman with the evidence I'd spent the day collecting. She seemed genuinely hopeful, as if she truly believed we could simply move past her months of deception and betrayal. "That's optimistic," I said. "I prefer to think of it as determined." She poured wine into 2 glasses and offered me one. 2 second chances. I accepted the glass, but didn't raise it for the toast. Talia, there's something I need to tell you. Her smile faltered slightly. What is it? I've been hired to conduct a security audit at your company. The wine glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the kitchen floor and sending red wine splashing across the white tiles like a crime scene. You what? A cybersecurity audit. I started today, actually. She stared at me in horror, and I could see her mind racing through the implications. Miles, you can't. There are conflict of interest issues, ethical problems. I disclosed my relationship to you before accepting the contract. The board approved it anyway. The board. Her voice was barely a whisper. They're very concerned about security breaches, especially ones involving employee personal information. She sank into a chair, her face pale. What did you find? I think you know what I found. We stared at each other across the broken glass and spilled wine, and I realized this was the moment our marriage truly ended. Not when I discovered her affair, not when I leaked her messages, but right now, when she finally understood that I wasn't the passive, accommodating husband she'd taken for granted. Please, she whispered, don't do this. I'm not doing anything, Talia. I'm just doing my job. But we both knew that wasn't true. This was revenge, pure and simple. And tomorrow, I was going to serve it ice cold. Friday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that usually made me optimistic about the day ahead. Today, however, it felt more like the calm before a hurricane. I dressed carefully in my best suit. If I was going to destroy 2 careers and possibly end my marriage, I wanted to look professional doing it. Talia had already left for work by the time I came downstairs, though I'd heard her pacing in the guest room until well past midnight. She'd tried to talk to me several more times after her wine glass shattered, but I'd claimed I needed to prepare my report and locked myself in my office. The truth was, I'd needed time to steel myself for what came next. Once I handed over the evidence to the board, there would be no going back. Porter would face criminal charges. Talia would likely be fired and potentially charged as an accessory. Our marriage would be over, not just emotionally, but legally. I should have felt guilty about the nuclear option I was about to deploy. Instead, I felt something closer to relief. My phone rang as I was getting into my car. Cambria's name appeared on the screen. Second thoughts? She asked without preamble. No. You? None whatsoever. I've scheduled an emergency board meeting for 10 o'clock. Will you be ready? I'll be there. Miles, thank you for all of this. I know it's costing you. Some things are worth the cost. The drive to Porter's office building felt different this morning. Yesterday I'd been a consultant conducting an audit. Today I was an executioner carrying out a sentence. Janet Morrison was waiting for me when I arrived, along with 2 other executives I didn't recognize. The board meeting had been moved up, apparently at Cambria's insistence. Do you have your report? Janet asked. I patted the briefcase containing printed copies of everything I'd found. It's comprehensive. How comprehensive? Comprehensive enough that you'll want to have your lawyers present. Her face went pale. That's serious? That's serious. The boardroom was on the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. Under different circumstances, I might have been impressed by the display of corporate power. Today, I was focused on the faces around the conference table. Cambria sat at the far end, impeccably dressed and wearing the expression of someone who'd been anticipating this moment for months. The other board members looked curious, but not particularly concerned. They thought they were here for a routine security briefing. Porter wasn't present, which was probably for the best. I wanted the board to see the evidence before he had a chance to spin it. Gentlemen, ladies, I began, connecting my laptop to the room's presentation system. What I'm about to show you represents a systematic pattern of embezzlement, fraud, and misuse of company resources spanning approximately 18 months. The room went silent except for the hum of the air conditioning system. I walked them through it methodically. The altered expense reports, the fake vendor payments, the personal charges disguised as business expenses. I showed them hotel receipts for romantic getaways, jewelry purchases, expensive dinners at restaurants that had never hosted business meetings. The total amount embezzled appears to be approximately $200,000, I concluded, and the evidence suggests this was not a solo operation. Who else was involved? Asked Margaret Chen, the board's chairwoman. Based on the documentation, at least one other employee was aware of and benefited from these activities. I clicked to the next slide, which showed several receipts with Talia's signature. This person accompanied the perpetrator on trips funded by stolen company money and received gifts purchased with embezzled funds. Cambria leaned forward. Do we know the identity of this accomplice? Talia Harren, Senior Account Manager. The name hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Several board members exchanged glances, clearly recognizing Talia from company events. "This is extensive," Margaret said finally. "What's your recommendation?" "Immediate termination of both employees, freezing of company accounts they had access to, and referral to law enforcement for criminal prosecution." "And you're certain about the evidence?" "I've maintained proper chain of custody throughout the investigation. Everything is documented and admissible in court." Margaret looked around the table. "I think we need to vote on this immediately. All in favor of accepting Mr. Harren's recommendations?" The vote was unanimous. "Janet, please have security escort both employees from the building immediately. Margaret, can you contact our legal department about criminal referrals?" "Already done," Margaret replied. "The police will be here within the hour." As the meeting broke up, Cambria approached me. "Excellent work," she said quietly. "Very thorough. Thank you. What happens now?" "Now we let the legal system handle it." "And your marriage?" I looked out the window at the city below, thinking about Talia sitting in her office, probably wondering when the axe would fall. I think that ended a long time ago. I just didn't want to admit it. I was packing up my equipment when my phone started ringing. Talia's name appeared on the screen, followed immediately by a text. "Call me now, emergency." I let it go to voicemail and continued packing. The phone rang again. This time it was Rafe. "Miles, buddy, you need to get down here, now." "What's wrong?" "Your wife is here, at the shop. She's upset." I could hear shouting in the background, along with what sounded like something being thrown. "I'll be right there." The drive to Rafe's shop took 20 minutes through midday traffic. I spent the time wondering how Talia had even known where to find me, then remembered she'd probably called my office and been told I was conducting an off-site audit. I found her in Rafe's office, pacing like a caged animal, while Rafe watched her warily from behind his desk. She spun around when I entered, her face flushed with anger and streaked with tears. "How could you do this to me?" she demanded. "I didn't do anything to you. I did my job." "Your job? Your job was to destroy my career? To ruin my life?" "My job was to identify security vulnerabilities and financial irregularities, which I did." "Don't give me that corporate speak. You planned this whole thing as revenge." I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt something shift inside me. The woman I'd married, the woman I'd loved for 6 years, was gone. In her place was a stranger who'd betrayed everything we'd built together and was now angry that there were consequences. "You're right," I said calmly. "This was revenge, and you deserved every bit of it." She stared at me in shock, as if she'd expected me to deny it. "I trusted you," she whispered, "and I trusted you. How did that work out for either of us?" "This is different. What you did will destroy me professionally. I'll never work in this industry again." "What you did destroyed our marriage. I'd say we're even." "Even? Miles, they're talking about criminal charges." "Then maybe you shouldn't have committed crimes." Rafe cleared his throat. "Maybe I should give you two some privacy." "No," I said, not taking my eyes off Talia. "We don't need privacy. We don't need anything from each other anymore." "Miles, please. I know I made mistakes, but this is too much. Can't we work something out?" "Like what?" "I don't know. Maybe if you told them you made an error in your investigation, or that the evidence was inconclusive." I stared at her in amazement. "You want me to perjure myself to cover up your crimes?" "I want you to remember that you're supposed to love me." "I did love you, past tense. But love doesn't mean enabling criminal behavior." She collapsed into a chair, sobbing. For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old sympathy, the instinct to comfort her that had been ingrained over 6 years of marriage. Then I remembered the hotel receipts with her signature, the jewelry she'd claimed was from work bonuses, the lies she'd told while looking me directly in the eye. "I'll have divorce papers drawn up," I said. "You can contest them if you want, but I'd recommend focusing your energy on finding a good criminal defense attorney." I turned to leave, but her voice stopped me. "I hope you're happy," she said bitterly. "I hope destroying me was worth it." I considered the question seriously. Was I happy? Not exactly. But I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. A sense of justice served, of accounts balanced. "I'm satisfied," I said, finally. "That's enough." The drive home was quiet, giving me time to process what had just happened. My marriage was over, definitively and irreversibly. Talia would face criminal charges and professional ruin. Porter would likely go to prison. I should have felt guilty about the magnitude of destruction I'd unleashed. Instead, I felt something closer to peace. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. Cambria's name appeared on the screen. "It's done," she said when I answered. "Security escorted them both out. The police are interviewing them now." How did Porter take it? About as well as you'd expect. He tried to blame everything on Talia, claimed she seduced him into it. Classy. Men like Porter never take responsibility for their actions. It's always someone else's fault. What happens now? Now we rebuild. The company will recover, probably stronger than before, and we'll both be free to move on with our lives. After ending the call, I sat in my car for a long moment, looking at the house I'd shared with Talia for 3 years. It felt different now, like a place I'd once visited rather than somewhere I belonged. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. I assumed it was from Porter, probably sent from a borrowed phone since his company device would have been confiscated. I deleted the message without responding. Inside the house, I poured myself a glass of whiskey and sat down to call my lawyer. There would be divorce proceedings to initiate, assets to divide, a new life to plan. But first, I called Rafe. How are you holding up? He asked. Better than expected. No regrets? I thought about the question while staring out the window at the neighborhood where Talia and I had planned to raise children, grow old together, build a life. None, I said, and meant it. Good, because I have a feeling this is just the beginning. What do you mean? People like Porter and Talia don't go down quietly. They'll try to drag you down with them if they can. Let them try. That's the spirit. But Miles, watch your back. Desperate people do desperate things. As if to underscore his point, my phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. Miles Harren? The voice was unfamiliar, professional. Yes. This is Detective Sarah Martinez with the Financial Crimes Unit. I'd like to schedule a time to interview you about the evidence you provided regarding Porter Kellor and Talia Marin. Of course. When would be convenient? How about tomorrow morning? 10 o'clock? I'll be there. After ending the call, I realized that Rafe was right. This was just the beginning. The investigation, the criminal trials, the divorce proceedings, it would all take months to resolve. But for the first time in a long time, I was looking forward to the future. Whatever came next, I would face it as myself, not as half of a broken marriage. I raised my glass in a silent toast to the empty house and the new life waiting beyond its walls. 3 weeks after Porter and Talia's termination, I was settling into a routine that felt almost normal. The divorce papers had been filed, the criminal investigation was proceeding, and I'd moved into a furnished apartment downtown while the house went on the market. My phone had stopped ringing with angry calls from Talia, though I occasionally received threatening messages from numbers I didn't recognize. The police had advised me to document everything, but assured me that desperate people often made empty threats. I was reviewing a security proposal for a new client when my phone buzzed with a text from Cambria. Can you meet me tonight? Something's happened. We arranged to meet at the same cafe where we'd first discussed our alliance. She arrived looking uncharacteristically rattled, her usual composure cracked around the edges. Porter made bail, she said without preamble. I thought his bail was set at $500,000. It was. Someone posted it for him. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Who? We don't know. The bail bondsman won't say, and Porter's lawyer isn't talking. What about Talia? Still in custody. Her bail hearing isn't until next week. I processed this information while stirring sugar into coffee I didn't want. Porter free and angry was a dangerous combination, especially if he blamed me for his downfall. There's something else, Cambria continued. Porter's been asking questions about you, your address, your work schedule, your habits. How do you know this? I still have friends at the company. People talk. What kind of questions? The kind that suggest he's planning something stupid. I thought about the threatening messages I'd been receiving, the feeling of being watched when I left my apartment, the suspicious car that seemed to be parked outside my building more often than coincidence would explain. I think he's been following me, I admitted. Then we need to do something about it. Like what? Like ending this before he escalates. I stared at her across the small table. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we give Porter exactly what he wants, a confrontation, but on our terms, with witnesses, in a controlled environment. That sounds dangerous. More dangerous than waiting for him to corner you alone in a parking garage. She had a point. If Porter was planning something, it would be better to force his hand in a situation where I had some control. What did you have in mind? There's a charity gala tomorrow night. High-profile event, lots of witnesses, security cameras everywhere. Porter will be there. He bought a ticket before his arrest, and his lawyer says he has a right to attend public events while out on bail. And you want me to go? I want us to go, together. Let Porter see that his actions have consequences, that he's lost everything while you've moved on. The plan was risky, but it had a certain elegant logic. Porter would be expecting me to hide, to avoid confrontation. Instead, I would appear in public, confident and unafraid, with his wife on my arm. "All right," I said, "but I want backup." "What kind of backup?" "The kind that runs an auto repair shop and doesn't ask questions." Saturday evening found me standing in front of my bathroom mirror, adjusting my tie and wondering if I was making a terrible mistake. The charity gala was being held at the same hotel where Talia had humiliated me just a month earlier. The irony wasn't lost on me. Rafe had agreed to attend as additional security, though he'd grumbled about having to rent a tuxedo. "I look like a penguin," he'd complained during our planning session. "A very large, very armed penguin." "You're not actually armed, are you?" I'd asked. "Define armed." "Carrying weapons." "Then no, I'm not armed. I'm just naturally intimidating." Cambria met me in the hotel lobby, looking stunning in a black evening gown that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She took my arm with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to being the center of attention. "Ready for this?" she asked. "As ready as I'll ever be?" The ballroom was filled with the usual collection of corporate executives, society figures, and politicians that populated these events. I recognized several faces from Porter's company, most of whom avoided eye contact when they saw me with Cambria. "There he is," Cambria murmured, nodding toward the bar. Porter stood near the far end of the room, holding a glass of whiskey and staring directly at us. He looked different than I remembered, thinner, more haggard, with a hollow-eyed appearance of someone under enormous stress. "He looks terrible," I observed. "Good. He should." Then we made our way through the crowd, accepting congratulations on Cambria's recent appointment to the company's board of directors and fielding questions about my role in uncovering the embezzlement scheme. I played the part of the dedicated cybersecurity consultant who'd simply been doing his job. Porter watched our progress across the room with the intensity of a predator tracking prey. When we were about 20 feet away, he started walking toward us. "Showtime," Cambria whispered. "Miles Harren," Porter said loudly enough for nearby conversations to pause. "I was hoping I'd see you here." "Porter, how's the criminal defense business treating you?" His face flushed red. "You think you're very clever, don't you? Destroying people's lives, breaking up families." "I think I'm very thorough. It's what clients pay for." "Clients?" He laughed bitterly. "Is that what you call my wife now?" Several people had stopped talking entirely, sensing drama. I could see phones being discreetly pulled out, probably to record whatever happened next. "I call your wife a woman who deserves better than a husband who steals from his employer to fund affairs with subordinates." "You sanctimonious bastard. You have no idea what you've done." "I have a pretty good idea. I did it intentionally." The admission sent a ripple through the nearby crowd. Porter's eyes widened as he realized I wasn't going to pretend this had been an accident. "You admit it? You admit you destroyed my career out of spite?" "I admit I exposed your crimes because you hurt someone I cared about. The fact that it destroyed your career is just a bonus." Porter's hands clenched into fists. "You destroyed Talia, too. She's sitting in jail because of your vendetta. She's sitting in jail because she committed crimes, just like you." "This isn't over," Porter snarled, stepping closer. "You think you can ruin my life and just walk away?" "I think I already did walk away. You're the one who can't seem to move on." Rafe appeared at my shoulder as if materialized from thin air. "Everything okay here, Miles?" Porter looked up at Rafe's imposing frame and seemed to deflate slightly. "Who's this? Your bodyguard?" "This is my friend Rafe. Rafe, this is Porter Kellor. He's been sending me threatening messages." "Has he now?" Rafe's voice carried the kind of quiet menace that came from years of dealing with difficult customers in rough neighborhoods. "That doesn't seem very smart." "Are you threatening me?" Porter demanded. "I'm observing that threatening people is generally unwise," Rafe replied calmly, "especially when you're out on bail for felony charges." Porter looked around the room, seeming to notice for the first time how many people were watching our conversation. Several phones were now openly recording, and I could see security guards moving closer. "This isn't over," he repeated, but with less conviction than before. "Yes, it is," Cambria said, speaking for the first time. "It's been over since the moment you decided to steal from my company and corrupt your employees. The only question now is whether you'll serve your time quietly or make things worse for yourself." "Cambria, please. We were married for 10 years. Doesn't that mean anything?" "It means I'm disappointed that I wasted 10 years on someone with so little integrity." The words hit Porter like physical blows. He staggered back a step, his face cycling through anger, pain, and something that might have been despair. "You'll regret this," he said finally. "All of you. I'll make sure of it." He turned and stalked toward the exit, pushing past curious onlookers and ignoring the security guards who moved to intercept him. We watched him go, the crowd slowly returning to their conversations with the buzz of people who'd witnessed something dramatic. "Well," Cambria said, straightening her dress, "that was invigorating." "Think he'll actually try something?" Rafe asked. "Probably not tonight. Too many witnesses, too much attention." I accepted a fresh drink from a passing waiter. "But we should be careful for the next few days." "I'll keep an eye on him," Rafe promised. "Guy like that, all bluster and no backbone. He'll probably crawl back under his rock and wait for his trial." But as we mingled with the other guests for the rest of the evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that Porter's threats weren't empty. He'd lost everything: his job, his wife, his freedom, his reputation. Men in his position sometimes did desperate things. The feeling proved prophetic when my phone rang at 3 a.m. "Miles?" The voice was unfamiliar, shaky. "Who is this?" "This is Janet Morrison from the company. I'm sorry to call so late, but there's been an incident." I sat up in bed, instantly alert. "What kind of incident?" "Porter broke into the office building tonight. Security caught him trying to access the computer systems." "Is he in custody?" "Yes, but Miles, he had a gun, and he was asking for your home address." I felt my stomach drop. "Did he get it?" "No, but he seemed to know you'd moved out of your house. He was asking about your new apartment." "How could he know that?" "I don't know, but the police want to talk to you. They think he might have been planning to confront you." I was already getting dressed. "I'll be right there." "Miles, be careful." Porter seemed unhinged. The security guard said he was talking to himself, making threats against you and Cambria. After ending the call, I sat on the edge of my bed and tried to process what I'd just learned. Porter hadn't been bluffing about escalation. He'd obtained a weapon and attempted to get my personal information. If security hadn't caught him, he might have shown up at my door. I called Rafe. "Porter just got arrested trying to break into his old office," I said when he answered. "He had a gun and was looking for my address." "Son of a dog. You okay?" "For now. But Rafe, I think this is about to get worse before it gets better." "Then we better make sure we're ready for whatever comes next." As I drove toward the police station to give my statement, I realized that my carefully planned revenge had unleashed forces I couldn't control. Porter was no longer just angry, he was desperate, armed, and apparently willing to risk everything for a chance at payback. The game had changed, and the stakes had just gotten much higher. The police station at 4 a.m. was a study in fluorescent-lit desperation. Detective Martinez met me in the lobby, looking tired but alert, despite the early hour. "Mr. Harren, thank you for coming in. We need to discuss Mr. Kellor's activities tonight." She led me to a small interview room where I spent the next 2 hours detailing my interactions with Porter, the threatening messages I'd received, and the confrontation at the charity gala. Detective Martinez took careful notes, occasionally asking for clarification. "Based on what you've told me and what we found at the scene, I'm recommending that Mr. Kellor's bail be revoked," she said finally. "He's clearly a threat to public safety." "What happens now?" "He'll appear before a judge this morning. Given that he was caught with an illegal firearm while attempting to break into his former workplace, I expect he'll be remanded to custody pending trial." I felt some of the tension leave my shoulders. "Good. Mr. Harren, I have to ask, do you have somewhere safe to stay for the next few days, just until we're certain Mr. Kellor is going to remain in custody?" "I can arrange something." "Good. We'll be in touch if we need anything else." The sun was rising as I left the police station, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that seemed incongruously beautiful after the night's events. I called Rafe from the parking lot. "Porter's back in custody," I reported. "Bail revoked, probably no getting out this time." "Thank God. You need a place to crash for a few days?" "Actually, I was thinking of checking into a hotel, somewhere with good security." "Smart. But Miles, this whole thing is almost over. Porter's going to prison, Talia's probably going to take a plea deal, and you can finally move on with your life." "I hope you're right." "I am right, trust me." But as I drove toward downtown to find a hotel, I couldn't shake the feeling that one more shoe was waiting to drop. Porter might be in custody, but Talia was still out there, still facing criminal charges, still angry about the destruction of her life. My phone rang as I was checking into a suite at the Marriott. Cambria's name appeared on the screen. "I heard about Porter," she said. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine. Tired, but fine." "I'm glad. Miles, I wanted to thank you for everything you've done. I know it cost you your marriage and put you in danger." "It was worth it?" "Was it? Really?" I considered the question while looking out the hotel window at the city waking up below. 6 weeks ago, I'd been married to a woman I thought I loved, living in a house we'd bought together. planning a future that seemed secure, if not exciting. Now I was alone in a hotel room. My wife was facing criminal charges, and I'd spent the night at a police station discussing serious threats. Yes, I said finally. It was worth it. I'm glad, because I have news that might make you even happier. What kind of news? Talia's lawyer called this morning. She wants to make a deal. I sat down heavily on the hotel bed. What kind of deal? Full cooperation with the prosecution in exchange for reduced charges. She's ready to testify against Porter about the embezzlement scheme. And that helps how? It ensures Porter goes to prison for a very long time, and it means Talia will probably get probation instead of jail time. I wasn't sure how I felt about that. Part of me wanted Talia to face the full consequences of her actions, but another part, the part that had loved her for 6 years, was relieved she wouldn't spend years in prison. There's something else, Cambria continued. Her lawyer says she wants to see you, to apologize and to discuss the divorce settlement. I don't think that's a good idea. Maybe not, but Miles, this could be your chance to get closure, to end this chapter of your life on your own terms. After ending the call, I spent the morning trying to work on client projects, but my concentration was shot. Every time I tried to focus on code or security protocols, my mind wandered back to the conversation with Cambria. Did I want to see Talia? Did I need closure? Or was I better off letting the lawyers handle everything? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Please, Miles, I know I have no right to ask, but I need to see you, just once, to explain. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. 1 meeting, public place, 1 hour. The response came immediately. Thank you. Coffee shop on 5th Street, 2 o'clock. Fine. I spent the next 4 hours alternating between regret about agreeing to the meeting and curiosity about what Talia could possibly say that would make any difference. By the time I walked into the coffee shop, I decided to listen politely and leave as quickly as possible. Talia was already there, sitting in a corner booth with her back to the wall. She looked terrible, thin, pale, with dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. She was wearing a simple black dress instead of her usual designer outfits, and her hair was pulled back in a plain ponytail. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down across from her. You have 1 hour. I know. Miles, I want you to know that I'm going to testify against Porter. I'm going to tell them everything, about the embezzlement, about how he manipulated me, about all of it. Good. I'm also not going to contest the divorce. You can have the house, the savings, everything. I just want this to be over. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. She seemed sincere, but then again, she'd seemed sincere throughout our marriage while carrying on an affair. Why? I asked. Because I owe you that much. Because I destroyed our marriage and ruined both our lives, and the least I can do is not make the divorce more painful than it has to be. That's not what I meant. Why did you do it? The affair, the lies, all of it. She was quiet for a long moment, staring into her coffee cup as if it held answers. I felt invisible, she said finally. In our marriage, at work, everywhere, like I was just going through the motions of a life instead of actually living one. So you decided to have an affair? I decided to feel wanted. Porter made me feel important, powerful, desired. He made me feel like I mattered. You mattered to me. Did I? Really? Or was I just part of your routine like everything else? The question hit harder than I'd expected. I thought about our marriage, the comfortable patterns, the predictable rhythms, the way we'd settled into parallel lives that intersected mainly at dinner and bedtime. That doesn't justify what you did, I said. No, it doesn't. Nothing justifies it. But Miles, you have to understand. I never meant for it to go this far. I never meant to hurt you this badly. But you did hurt me. You lied to me every day for months. You used our money to fund your affair. You humiliated me in front of your colleagues. I know. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. She started crying then. Not the angry tears from our previous confrontations, but something deeper, more broken. I lost everything, she whispered. My job, my reputation, my freedom, my marriage. Everything I worked for, everything I cared about, it's all gone. You made your choices. I know. But Miles, did you have to destroy me so completely? Did you have to take everything? I looked at her across the small table, this woman I'd loved, who'd shared my bed and my dreams and my life, and tried to feel something other than cold satisfaction. Yes, I said finally. I did. She nodded as if she'd expected that answer. I hope someday you can forgive me, she said. I hope someday I won't need to. I stood up to leave, but her voice stopped me. Miles, are you happy now? Did destroying me make you happy? I turned back to look at her one last time, broken, defeated, paying the price for her betrayals. No, I said honestly, but I'm free, and that's enough. I walked out of the coffee shop and into the afternoon sunlight, leaving behind the wreckage of my marriage and the woman who'd shared my life for 6 years. It should have felt like an ending, but instead it felt like a beginning. My phone buzzed with a text from Cambria. Dinner tonight? I think we both deserve to celebrate. I looked back at the coffee shop, where Talia was probably still sitting in our booth, contemplating the ruins of her life. Then I looked ahead at the city stretching out before me, full of possibilities I hadn't considered in years. I'd like that, I texted back. 3 months later, I was sitting in a courtroom watching Porter Kellor receive a sentence of 8 years in federal prison for embezzlement and fraud. Talia had testified against him as promised, her testimony helping to secure the conviction. She received 2 years probation and community service, along with an order to pay restitution. Our divorce had been finalized the week before, with her keeping her promise not to contest my terms. Justice served, Cambria whispered as Porter was led away in handcuffs. Justice served, I agreed. That evening we celebrated at an expensive restaurant overlooking the harbor. Cambria had been appointed permanent CEO of the company, and I'd been hired as their chief security officer. We made a good team, her business acumen and my technical skills complementing each other perfectly. Any regrets? She asked over dessert. I thought about the question while watching boats move across the dark water. 6 months ago, I'd been a different person, passive, accommodating, willing to accept betrayal in the name of keeping peace. None, I said, and meant it. Good, because I have a proposal for you. Business or personal? Both. She reached across the table and took my hand, her smile promising possibilities I was finally ready to explore. Outside the restaurant windows, the city lights sparkled like stars, illuminating a future that was entirely my own. I'd paid a high price for my revenge, but in the end, it had bought me something more valuable than satisfaction. It had bought me freedom. And that, I realized, had been worth everything.